Some very intense shows this week. Big Sky, No Man's Land, A Teacher. So we've got a couple of kids' cartoon shows to kind of balance it out as well. This is your TV news and reviews for the week. Hey guys, Dan here with this week's TV news and reviews. Welcome to the show. Like I said, a lot of really intense programming this week to talk about, so we're going to balance it out with a couple of lesser-known new kids shows as well. But first up, let's talk about the news. Not a whole lot going on this week, which kind of makes sense. It's Thanksgiving week. A couple of cancellations for you, though. Two at Amazon. Utopia, which started earlier this season. John Cusack was one of the stars of that, and one that I thought had a lot of potential. I didn't give it a super high grade, but it was like in that B range. I thought the pilot was certainly interesting enough. So that is not going into season 2. 6-year journey, by the way, to even get that to television. First, it was going to be at HBO, and then I think maybe USA or something. Or Paramount Network, I forget, and then eventually it ended on Amazon. The Expanse, also on Amazon, that is going away after 6 years. It will get one final season, which will be the 6th, to debut probably sometime in 2021 or maybe even 2022, because the 5th season is just about to premiere in a couple of weeks. So obviously, Amazon is seeing the benefit of keeping that on for a 6th season, but then it will be done after that. And original cast member Cass Angar is not returning due to some sexual harassment allegations, and that started off this switched networks as well. It's only in its 3rd Amazon season, but that will be its last. So there you go. And then speaking of shows that keep changing networks, One Day at a Time is canceled over at Pop. Of course, it was on at Netflix first for the first, I think, 3 seasons, and then Pop took it over for the 4th season, but that ended up being half a season because of COVID. They only filmed, I think, 8 of the 10 episodes, or 14 episodes, rather, that they had hoped to. And then CBS brought it back in summer reruns when they were looking for stuff to air this summer in COVID times, but it just, was never enough. However, Sony keeps planning to shop this to other outlets. Now, they can't really take it back to another streamer until, I think, 2022, as per the Netflix contract. So it won't be on another streamer, but it will be hopefully somewhere. I guess CBS proper doesn't really want it. But it's unfortunate because it's a truly great show. I hope it does find a third life somewhere. All right, so some hosting news. We have a Grammy nominee announced as Grammy host coming in January 31st on CBS, and that is Trevor Noah. He was nominated for his audiobook version of Born a Crime, and he'll be now hosting the Grammys. A lot of interesting snubs at the Grammys this year. The Weeknd was all set to perform, and then they didn't nominate him, so he said, well, screw you guys, I'm doing the Super Bowl anyway, so I don't need you or the Grammys. And then a lot of songs and albums that came out in the last few months weren't eligible yet, which is very odd. The cutoff for release was the end of August, and the show is until the end of January, so that means music for 5 months won't be eligible until next year's Grammys, 2022, which means some of the nominees this year are things that came out like really almost a year and a half ago. It's a very odd sort of cutoff time, especially now that we're all getting music so instantly off YouTube or Alexa or whatever. You used to wait for the album to drop or the single to be in the stores, and now none of that applies. So I don't know. I think that's very odd. But anyway, I'm sure Trevor Noah will be a good host. I love his version of The Daily Show. And then in other hosting news, Ken Jennings has been tapped to at least be the interim host of Jeopardy. They've not announced anybody permanent yet, but look, usually the people that they sort of get right off the bat to sort of test out end up sometimes being the people. And I think Ken Jennings was kind of the obvious choice from the start. So I hope he does a good job. I think the reason they're saying it's just going to be a tester is because they don't really know how his hosting abilities are going to be, so they don't want to give him a big contract yet. But I think a lot of people will be watching to see, how well he does. So the original Trebek shows were supposed to go through right up to Christmas. However, the producers decided, you know what, a lot of shows around the holidays, especially like that week of Christmas, get preempted for, local content or whatever, holiday programming. So rather than preempt the final, couple episodes of Trebek that maybe then wouldn't air, like basically what happens when a local network decides to preempt an episode of a game show, it doesn't get re-aired, so they're going to do 2 weeks of best of Trebek, and have some of his most famous episodes, I guess, from over the years. And then his final show will be, his last week of shows, I should say, will be January 4th. So I guess that would go through like the 8th or something, whatever that Friday is. So the Jennings episodes will then start the following Monday, so January 11th. So we can look forward to all of that. And it's no surprise, by the way, that the ratings for Jeopardy have been rising since Alex's death. They reached over 10 million viewers for the first time since April, and that's, when everybody was kind of shut in from the pandemic, and ratings across the board were up for like everything, all kinds of shows, all day parts. So, I'm glad to see people flocking to Jeopardy again to kind of get that love out there for Alex. And then Ken Jennings, by the way, I announced a couple weeks ago about him and the other guys from Greatest of All Time, the Jeopardy champions, are going to be on this game show called The Chase as sort of the experts, and that will start airing January 17th. I don't know if the Jennings episodes are going to be first. They're going to kind of rotate him, Brad Rutter, and James Holzhauer, but anyway, it'll be interesting. So he'll be on Jeopardy in the evening, and then in primetime a couple of times on The Chase. And then in this week in reboots, we have two of them for you. One of them is another game show. NBC really sort of doubling down, tripling down maybe even, on their game show stuff. They already have The Wall, they have The Weakest Link, they have Ellen's Game of Games, and now they're going to have a College Bowl reboot starring Peyton Manning as the host. Peyton Manning, who, look, I knew the name for many, many years. I'm not that out of it with sports, but I know Peyton Manning, I know Eli Manning, but it wasn't really till the nationwide commercials with him and Brad Paisley, or was that Brad Paisley, right, that I was just like, all right, this guy's at least kind of funny, and he has some personality. So College Bowl is a show that I don't really know much about. Like, I am a game show connoisseur, but College Bowl, the original run ended in the 70s, or maybe that was even the second run then. Maybe they had one, because, it was first on radio in like the 40s and 50s, and then on TV after that. But yeah, it ended its television run in the 70s. It hasn't really been seen since. I mean, they don't air reruns. It could be one of the game shows where all the episodes have been, erased over the years. So I don't know. I don't know much about the dynamics of this. I know that they had an actual College Bowl for real-life universities that swept through college campuses through the 90s. So I know vaguely what the College Bowl is, because I was in college in the 90s, but in terms of the game show dynamics, I have no idea. So it'll be interesting to see that come back, and that's scheduled for early next year with Peyton Manning. And then a script order also at NBC for a TV show version of the film Finding Forrester. Maybe a lot of people have rediscovered this movie since Sean Connery's passing. Of course, this is the one where he says, "You're the man now, dog." That classic line. I've never seen the movie. Don't know what kind of a TV show it might be, but, I mean, it always sort of seemed like an interesting subject matter, so I don't know. Who knows? People seem to like the film, so I could see people flocking to it. Look, NBC, I think of all the networks, has done the best of porting over movies to TV shows because they had Friday Night Lights, they had Parenthood, they had About a Boy. All of those I thought were very, very well done TV versions of the movies. So we'll see. Maybe Finding Forrester will be up there. But all right, so that's it. Not a whole lot of news, like I said. So let's get into the reviews and try and keep this maybe under 45 minutes. It's rare, but sometimes it does happen. We're going to start with this new TV show, Big Sky, and this is over on ABC. This is a David E. Kelley production. Of course, he is known for many things over the years. Ally McBeal and The Practice and Picket Fences, but he sort of went off of the broadcast television model, and he was like doing streamer stuff, and that's where he really wanted to be. However, one of the new heads of programming over at ABC is an old, coworker or maybe friend, I don't know, of his, and sort of lured him over to do this because it was basically billed to him as sort of it's going to have a streamer type quality, an HBO type quality, but on network television. And true enough, I will say some of the language, I just watched the first episode, and some of the language is definitely, I think it even goes above some of the stuff NYPD Blue was saying back 20 years ago when they were sort of breaking boundaries with, saying, BS and stuff like that, but, the actual words. But there was some language in the first episode I was like, okay, for network TV, that's little intense, but basically the story revolves around a couple of private detectives, one played by good old Ryan Phillippe, and the other played by Kylie Bunbury, who I kind of recognize. Let's see what she's been in. Game Night, I've seen that. She was in Under the Dome. Okay, I watched that show. That's kind of where I know her from then. But anyway, they joined forces with Cody Hoyt's estranged wife, that's the Phillippe character, and they want to search for two sisters who have been kidnapped by a truck driver on a Montana highway, and we see earlier in the episode one of the first scenes. I don't like to do spoilers, I guess, so I shouldn't really say too much more than even that, but yeah, and I'm not going to say any more than that. I feel like it might give away too much already. I probably have done so. But I like to give at least a basic synopsis. And essentially, Cody, the Ryan Phillippe character, is discovering that these are not the only two girls that have vanished. And the reason he's looking for them is, his son is involved with one of them. And so it's basically that's all I really want to say plot-wise, because it's even just that first episode, it's very layered with plot details that I think will come up throughout the season perhaps, but it's definitely an action-based, suspenseful drama show. I think that's probably the best way to describe it. Some of the other people involved in it include John Carroll Lynch, who you might not know the name, but he is, I best know him from the Drew Carey Show back in the day. He played Drew's brother, but he's been in some of the American Horror Story ones. He was in Fargo, in the movie, I think. So he's done a few things over the years, but we also have, again, people I recognize, but not necessarily their names. Maybe Catherine Winnick, Brian Garrity, Valerie Mahaffey, who I know from a few things back in the day, but she was Desperate Housewives was one of the things I would say she's best known for, but she also was in Northern Exposure even before that, so she's in this a little bit as the mother of one of the characters, so there's a lot going on here, and that's, plot-wise, that's it. That's all I can say. So let's talk about the show itself. I am a big David E. Kelley fan. I have been since Picket Fences. That was really the first time I noticed who he was, and I guess it was one of his first big shows. I knew he worked on other shows. I believe he was like a part of the LA Law team, but he didn't create it. Picket Fences, I think, was maybe the first one he created. But over the years, I loved Ally McBeal, and I didn't really keep up with The Practice, but the few episodes I've seen of that I really liked, and so on and so forth. And he definitely has, I feel like, a specific sort of style to his shows that is, very, not Ally McBeal necessarily, that was more lighthearted, but, quirky character. Well, I guess Ally McBeal certainly did have quirky characters. Odd people, odd settings, is sort of the name of the game for him, and he does it very well. And this, when it first started, I wasn't quite sure where it was going. It seemed like, okay, they're throwing too many characters at us, right away. I don't know how they all relate. By the end of the first episode, I think we see how everybody relates in one way or another. And so, okay, fine. So moving forward now, it is a weekly show on ABC. You can't binge it like on Netflix. So going forward, hopefully we'll delve into these characters more specifically. But we do sort of connect them all by the end of that first episode, which I think was a smart idea, because I was like trying to take stock of everybody, and I'm like, okay, these people don't seem to have anything to do with anybody. And so they kind of blend that together nicely. The intrigue is here for sure. The first episode ends with an incredibly shocking moment that I certainly did not see coming, and it reminded me really of back in the Lost day, some of the really interesting stuff that was going on in that show that you just seemed to come out of nowhere. And I don't think the writing here is as sharp as first season Lost, or even the first 2 seasons of Lost. But I think this is definitely one to watch. I'm certainly intrigued by what is coming next. The acting is very solid, and I think it's interesting because the setting is not. It's not one that we see a lot on television, except for, or even in the movies, except for this kind of a show, like these sort of like backwoods killer type of things. And so, but what they've done here, and I don't know who directed the first episode. It may have been David E. Kelly. Let me see if it says. Yeah, he wrote it though. Well, that makes sense. Yep, that definitely makes sense. He wrote the second episode as well, and it looks like co-wrote the third episode. So he's definitely getting in there. But Paul McGuigan is the director, and he's done a lot of different sort of stylized things. Lucky Number 11, and he's directed episodes of Scandal and Sherlock before. So he's definitely got sort of a niche as well, and a specific look to his stuff. But Montana here almost becomes a character as well. Just like New York does in Sex and the City kind of thing. Like, it's definitely a strong backdrop, and we see that really early on in one of the opening scenes where the cop played by John Carroll Lynch is helping somebody out of the mud, and all that fine Montana mud, and all that kind of stuff. I really like this show. I'm very excited to see where it goes next. And for network television, I'm not sure that I don't know that it gets much better than this under the constraints that they have, with this type of a show. So I'm going to leave Big Sky with an A-. So let's move on to Hulu and talk about A Teacher. This is based actually on a movie that I had heard of but never seen, but it's the same premise as the film, essentially. We've got a teacher here played by Kate Mara, Claire Wilson. She is a hot, young new teacher at this Texas high school, and she makes friends in the first episode with one of her new students, Eric Walker, played by Nick Robinson. Now, it's interesting to me because Nick Robinson, shortly after Jurassic World, the first Chris Pratt one, sort of made it clear that, look, I don't really want to do high school roles anymore. I want to kind of move on. Like, I'm in my 20s now. And then he sort of rescinded that when Love, Simon came down the pike, because he thought it was such an important story to tell, and his brother was gay in real life, so he's like, I really, want to do this, for my gay brother. And but here he's playing a high schooler again. This is now, 3 full years, or at least 2, after Love, Simon. So obviously, look, he's got a very youthful look to him, but I think we've learned a lesson here in acting. Never say never. Never say that you're done with something. If the script is good enough, if the part is juicy enough, I think that's something you can sink your teeth into. And here I think he's found something. This is a very compelling show. We don't see this in the first episode, but I don't think I'm giving away any spoilers because it's in the plot synopsis. It's been in all of the ads that I've seen on Hulu for the show. But these guys get into an affair sort of situation, and she ends up, I guess, having sex with him. I'm not sure if they go that far or not, but I sort of get the sense that they do. But she is married, so that adds, obviously another interesting sort of wrinkle to it. Adam David Thompson plays her husband, which we do see, but he is ex-military and he's a police officer. I'm sorry, he's the older brother. Who plays the husband then? I just don't know. Oh, here you go. Ashley Zuckerman. A guy named Ashley. I've met a couple of those actually. He plays the husband. He was on Designated Survivor and a couple other things, but basically he is not home a lot. He's away on business and such, and he's also been sort of keeping Claire. Maybe not as sexually satisfied. They're trying to have a baby together, and he's sort of hemming and hawing about that. So that's the basic plot there. I think this is a juicy script. This is an interesting script. There's disclaimers at the beginning of this show warning you that you're going to see scenes of some statutory business, some grooming, and then at the end we have the warning about if this is something that's happening to you, if you know somebody that's being sexually assaulted or whatever by a teacher, here's the number. So this is obviously a hot button show. It's really trying to push a lot of boundaries, and I believe the film was meant to do that too, but I also don't think it was an American film. Let me see. Oh, it is an American film. Okay, for some reason I thought it was like a foreign movie. All right, but no, it was from 2013, and actually, Hannah Fidel, the director of that film, created this miniseries as well. So, and she's one of the 3 directors of the episodes as well. So she is really getting her hands on it, and she wrote and directed that first episode. There's going to be 10 episodes for this total, and she either writes, co-writes, or directs like 4 or 5 of so like half of these episodes. She has a direct imprint on. So as we go on, I think this story hopefully will get a little more interesting. I mean, really, in this first episode, we're just kind of getting to know everybody. We're getting to know Eric and sort of his dumb friends, and we're getting to know Claire and where she fits in with the faculty, or does she feel more comfortable with the students? Do we see her sort of putting on her best for especially this kid? We don't really see a lot yet in this first episode, so is it enough to entice me to watch more? Yeah, I mean, I like these actors, and certainly it's an interesting subject matter. I mean, I always think when something like this happens in a TV show or movie, I always think about Reese Witherspoon in Election, where Matthew Broderick's friend is like in a big affair with Reese's character, Tracy Flick, and it comes out like in the opening scene, and it's this just disaster. But it's played a little bit for laughs because it's sort of a dark comedy. This is not that at all. This is certainly played dramatically, but I'm certainly intrigued in where it goes from here. But it needs to sort of hurry up a little bit because not much happens, to be honest, in that first episode. But I can see that the seeds of something interesting are forming for sure. So I'm going to leave a teacher with a B+. Let's stick on Hulu and talk about one of their very, very actiony, dark new shows called No Man's Land. This is a war drama, war thriller, war action show, and basically one of the plots, there's actually a few intersecting plots as well in this one, but one of the plots is that a family is sort of grieving the death of one of their kids, one of their the guy's sister, whatever, in a suicide bombing from ISIS. And meanwhile, her brother is with his wife at this fertility clinic. They're maybe trying to have a baby as well, and he sees a news report and is like, I think that's my dead sister on that news report, as part of ISIS, and so he sets off to find her in the Middle East. So that's basically, I guess the main plot, but really there's several plots sort of coming together here at once, and they all sort of revolve around stuff going on in Syria. But YPJ, is an organization I don't really know much about still. Certainly had never even heard of before this show. But basically, it is a female-based terrorist organization, I guess, for all intents and purposes, to us Americans. And that's sort of why the title of the show is No Man's Land. There are certainly some men that are involved in these storylines, especially the brother of the gal, but it takes a good look at the YPJ and sort of their inner workings as well. But here's the main problem. Now, first of all, this show was a little too intense for me to watch the day after Thanksgiving. I probably shouldn't have, but it was on my list for this week, and I ended up watching an episode and a half of it because I really wanted to get a full grasp of these characters a little more than just that first hour, and also a good probably 50 to 60% of it is subtitled, so you really do have to pay attention to everything kind of that's going on. It definitely looks and feels like a big budget war movie. It reminded me, some of the scenes reminded me of like things in Black Hawk Down and stuff like that. But so that part's great. Like the action sequences are great. The explosions seem very real. It's a typical like movie archetype of characters. Like we don't really get to know anybody that well except for maybe the brother, but even then, like it's more about him trying to find the sister, so we don't necessarily know much about him yet anyway. But my biggest problem with this show is that nothing necessarily comes to us from the Syrians' perspective. Everything we see is more of a Western look at what this landscape might be, and we've just been there, done that with so many different TV shows and movies and documentaries over the last 15 to 20 years. I just don't think that there's much more to say from the American perspective. Everybody that is the focal point of this movie, of this show rather, is not a native of Syria. So they have, the show, I keep calling it a movie because it is so, movie-esque in its execution and delivery, certainly. And so that's why I keep thinking of it like a movie. But it's not. It's a show, and it's a very intense one. And I think if you like this kind of stuff, if you like war thrillers, if you like, some espionage stuff, if you like a lot of explosions, I think you'll find some things to like here, and I think there are some things to like about it, but I just wish that if you're going to have the whole thing take place in Syria, I would love to get non-foreigners' opinions of it. I would love to see something through Syrian characters' eyes, and we don't get any of that. And so that was definitely a letdown for me. So for now, I'm going to leave No Man's Land with a B-. I say for now, but this is probably not one that I will go back to. It's just so depressing, first of all. I will say the acting is good in it. I don't know any of these people, but, I think they all seem competent. But for me, it just fell a bit flat and generic. In those regards, I think they could have done a lot more with it. So let's move on next to Nickelodeon. Let's talk about the astronauts. And oddly enough, this is not one of the kids shows I was talking about that kind of, sort of was a palate cleanser to some of these really intense shows, because this one's actually kind of intense too. It's a live action show called The Astronauts, and it is an interesting one because usually the live action shows on Nickelodeon are more of the comedic variety. You've got your Henry Danger and Side Effect, or what was it called? Not Side Effects. The one I reviewed last week, Side Hustle, and things like that, more on the comedy end of things. This one is very dramatic. And essentially, if you've ever seen the movie Space Camp from the 80s, which I have not, but I know the premise, it seems a lot like that just in the premise. But basically 5 children sneak onto a spaceship, and I think all of their parents work for whatever NASA type organization is at play here. I don't know if all 5 of them, or maybe a couple of them, are friends of the kids, but either way, the ship's AI sends them into space, and they have to basically work together to find their way back to Earth, while attempting to do the appropriate space mission that was intended for that particular ship. So I recognized a couple of the kids in this show from some of the other movies I've seen. So Keith L. Williams, he is the black kid in Good Boys. So we've seen him before, and then one of the other kids, not sure which one it is. I'm not sure what his real name is. But he played the bully kid in the movie Wonder. Great movie if you've not seen it. But this was produced by Ron Howard and Brian Grazer under their Imagine umbrella. It's under the Kids and Family Imagine umbrella. And of course, look, they're no strangers to the space program. They produced Apollo 13, one of the, to me, best astronaut movies of all time. But here, they've definitely fallen a bit from that, that they've set the bar way up here. This is a very, very average show. First of all, the acting, or overacting, I should say, it's not good. It's very distracting, and a couple of the kids are really trying their best here, but I think the script has let them down because, for one thing, even as kids, they're making the dumbest decisions that you could think of. And then when they do talk to their parents, back on the home base, who are, it's not NASA, it's like whatever fake program they came up with, but the parents that are astronauts or part of that organization are trying to talk to them, and then they're making stupid decisions, and they're also overacting. I think maybe the edict was set down like, okay, this is an intense show, so you gotta be intense, guys, but like, it's all way too over the top. So I think the target audience for this is definitely older kids. So probably tweens, I would say, like maybe between. I mean, younger kids could enjoy it as well, but I don't know if they'll find it as interesting. I would say, an 8 or 9-year-old could watch this, but I think it's more geared towards like 12, 13, 14-year-olds that still watch Nickelodeon but are sort of over like some of the more kiddie stuff like Henry Danger and I don't know, like Loud House and stuff like that. I think this is more for them. They're sort of transitioning the kids out from this kind of stuff to, I don't know, Mandalorian or Stranger Things or stuff like that. This just falls short of all of that, unfortunately. Like, I wish it was more interesting, but it's kind of not. The Siri type AI is really like, I mean, what kind of organization would spend money on something that screws this much up? Like, there should have been no reason for her to launch them into space. At least in the movie Space Camp, it made sense because it was the 80s and like the computers were still sort of coming up and everything. But I don't know. I found this to be quite middling, or possibly even below average. So I think I'm actually going to leave it with a below average. I'm going to leave the astronauts with a C minus. I really wish the acting was better. I think just that little bit could have put it up to at least like a C, maybe a C plus, but it's pretty bad. All right, so the final 2 shows we have, yes, I wanted to lighten my palate a little bit, so we're going to do a couple of cartoons. We're going to do the big cartoon next week, which is Animaniacs. I'm continually behind here on my TV reviews by like a week or 2. So now that it's December, I'm going to start cranking these out like about every 5 days to kind of just catch up on everything before the end of the year, and then we'll wrap up with a big year-end best and worst of TV. But so yes, Animaniacs next week, Saved by the Bell next week. But for now, we have 2 other cartoons, and this one, the first one, is actually on 2 different streaming platforms, which is really weird because, as far as I know, they're completely separate from each other. I watched this on Hulu, but you can also watch it on Peacock. It's not for free. It's not one of the free shows on Peacock, but if you have the paid Peacock membership, you can stream it on there as well, which I think is very, very odd because Hulu is owned by ABC and Disney, and Peacock obviously is owned by NBC. So either way, this is called The Mighty Ones, and this is definitely for the two cartoons that we're going to talk about today. One of them is for kids that are a little bit older, not as old as for the astronauts, not tweens necessarily, but older in sense of like maybe 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then the other one we're going to talk about, Pikwik Pack on Disney Junior, is for like 4 or 5-year-olds, maybe very young kids. But The Mighty Ones is basically a group of some odd characters: a twig, a pebble, a leaf, and a strawberry. And they basically live in a backyard that's kind of dirty, and they all belong to, or at least think they belong to, a trio of equally dirty humans who they mistake for gods, because of course they're so big and tall. And basically this reminds me a lot of some of the early 2000s stuff on Cartoon Network. Even like early to like maybe the 5, 6, 7 years ago. Like this reminds me of things like the Aqua Teen Hunger Force, The Adventures of Gumball. Like it's all sort of in that sort of silly but a bit abstract kind of vein. And like a lot of the Cartoon Network shows, even though this is a Hulu show, each episode of this is in 2 installments. So each quote-unquote episode is really only like 11 or 12 minutes, but then they put 2 of them into a full-length half-hour show. And so, this is kind of cute. I mean, one thing I liked about this is, the voice cast is really up to be silly. And they're really kind of throwing all that they have into these little characters. And, some of them are stupid, some of them are smart, but they all sort of have their own little quirks about them. In the one episode I saw, the leaf gets, pushed to the bottom of the sea, or the ocean, and they're trying to figure out ways to get to her, but they can't because they're all so stupid. So it's harmless fun. It's a bit madcap. It's certainly abstract in the way of some of those great Cartoon Network shows of yore. I didn't hate it. I laughed a couple of times. I don't think it's nearly as funny as some of those other shows, but it certainly could fill a hole in a 10-year-old's viewing schedule. So I think it's okay for what it is. I'll leave The Mighty Ones with a B-. So finally, I told you this would be a pretty quick show. I think we're going to get under 45 minutes because I don't have too much to say about Pikwik Pack. This is on Disney Junior, and like pretty much all shows on Disney Junior, like the Mighty Ones, this is 2 segments in 1 half-hour show. So it's really sort of 2 shorts, or 2 short episodes in 1 half-hour. So we've got 4 adorable animals here. We've got Sookie the hedgehog, Axel the raccoon, Tibor the hippo, and Hazel the cat, and they basically go all around town delivering magical packages filled with love to the different animal citizens of Pikwik, and each day, or really in each episode, a new package arrives. And so one thing I really liked about this is that all the kids, or all the animals, I should say, are actually voiced by children. Sometimes in shows like this, there's a few kids in the mix, but then there's adults, especially like, boy characters are voiced often by, full-grown women. There are certainly exceptions to that, but yeah, here, they're all voiced by little kids, and it's super cute. It's kind of like Bubble Guppies. It reminds me of that a little bit. And I like that Axel keeps calling everything excellent. I thought that was really cute. I think this is a good show for the proper age group. It's literally like for 3, 4, 5-year-olds, probably, maybe 6. However, the 2 episodes I watched, there was a couple things in each one I was like, well, I'm not positive that this is the best lesson we can learn right now. Like the first episode was they're going to the amusement park, but they only have enough time really to ride one ride. And so they all just split up and ride their favorite ride without their friends. And then they realize, oh, like something's missing. I'm sort of sad. And so then they come together at the end and like, oh yeah, I really had an okay time, but like would have been, better if y'all were there. And I was thinking to myself, well, okay, but right now we're like in COVID, and like a lot of kids are going to have to find their own fun without their best friends. So I don't know. Some of the messages I think are a little bit mixed. Also, I can't quite figure out the personalities of any of these kids because they're all the same. They all seem like they're very kind, very nice. Let's all share, but I can't differentiate any of them. They all seem exactly the same to me, and I'm not sure that's a great quality either. So I did enjoy this show. Oh, one other thing I really liked about it is it's not CGI. It is, I guess, well, I'm not sure if it's not CGI or what it is, or if it's a combination, but it certainly has a look unlike anything else on Disney Junior. It's from Canada, which might explain it, but I do think it's hand-drawn. And from what I read about it, it's not CGI. So I did like that about it. It certainly pops like nothing else on Disney Junior. Of the 3 or 4 things I've reviewed in the last year and a half on Disney Junior, they all seem to have the same basic look about them. And this certainly looks different. It pops in that regard. So I have to give it some credit for that. But there's certainly, I just wish the characters were a little different. I wish the messages were maybe a little better for COVID times. But it was cute. I have to admit that. So I think I'm going to leave Pikwik Pack with a B-. I think for kids, you can certainly do worse. So, all right, that's it. That's the show. Next week, like I said, we're going to do Saved by the Bell, the reboot. We're going to do Animaniacs, the reboot on Hulu. I can't wait to watch that show specifically. And then I'll find some other things. There's a couple things from September, October that I would like to catch up on as well that sort of just fell through the cracks. Noughts and Crosses on Peacock is one of them. But look, as we get into Christmas season, there will be less and less brand new shows out there to review, so I'll play catch up on some of that stuff in the coming weeks. But that's it. Comment below, subscribe, like the video if you did like watching what you saw, and that's it. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.